Yet I hope that the certainty of what we will have to meet will make you rise above these fears. We must go about our daily business more determined than ever to do the ordinary things as well as we can, and when we find a way to do anything more in our communities to help others, to build morale, to give a feeling of security, we must do it. Whatever is asked of us, I am sure we can accomplish it. We are the free and unconquerable people of the United States of America. To the young people of the nation, I must speak a word tonight. You are going to have a great opportunity. There will be high moments in which your strength and your ability will be tested. I have faith in you. I feel as though I was standing upon a rock, and that rock is my faith in my fellow citizens. On the following day, on December 8th, President Roosevelt went before Congress to report on the attack and ask for a declaration of war. He also wired British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and said, "Today, all of us are in the same boat, and it is a ship which will not and cannot be sunk." So before I go into his presentation anymore, I would like to introduce our speaker today, Albert McFadyen, who is joining us to help reflect on President Franklin Roosevelt's life and presidency and his response to the attacks on Pearl Harbor. For over 20 years, Albert has been researching and portraying the 32nd President of the United States, which began with a production of Annie at the Lancaster Opera House in the late 1990s. Originally from Niagara Falls, he has performed at numerous schools and theaters across the country, and he supplied President Roosevelt's voice in the Ken Burns production, The National Parks, America's Best Idea. Please stand and join me in welcoming President Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
You may be seated. On January 6, 1941, I said the following in my State of the Union address. And at that time, the war had been raging in Europe since 1939. September of 1939. This speech, and I won't read it all because I might put you to sleep, was known as the Four Freedoms speech, and I meant every word that it says. The immediate need right now in this country is for a swift and driving increase in armament productions to meet the hazards from the Nazis and possibly the Japanese. We should plan a better system by which persons deserving or needing gainful employment may obtain it, hopefully in the armaments industry. In the future days in which we seek to make secure, we look forward to a world founded upon 4 essential human foundations. The first is the freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world. The second is the freedom of every person to worship God in his own way, everywhere in the world. The third is a freedom from want, which translated into world terms means economic understandings which all will secure in every nation a healthy peacetime life for its inhabitants. The fourth is the freedom from fear, which translated into world terms means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and through a thorough fashion so that no nation again will ever take up arms against any other nation. Freedom means the supremacy of human rights everywhere. Our support goes to those who struggle to gain those rights and to keep them. Our strength is our unity of purpose. To this high concept, there can be no anything else but victory. Thank you. In that year, war seemed to be coming closer and closer. But also in the year 1941, I had run for president again. And I beat the Republican from Kansas, Wendell Willkie. I received my 3rd term as president. I received 449 electoral votes, and Landon got 82. We beat him. I sat down with the cabinet and General George Marshall, and we discussed world events. The magic code intercepts, we had broken the Japanese consular code, indicated something big was about to happen. Spy activity in Hawaii and even in the United States was up. We expected Hong Kong, Singapore, and possibly our own Philippines to be hit by the Japanese. By executive order, I prohibited the selling and shipping of scrap metal and oil to Japan. We were not going to send them metal to make bullets and bombs to kill our people. Japanese Ambassador Nomura and his assistant, Mr. Karusho, were scheduled to have an urgent meeting with our Secretary of State, Cordell Hull, at 2 p.m. on Sunday, December 7th, 1941. You can bring me to the table. Sure. You know, it's a beautiful day here in Washington, D.C. on December 7th, 1941. And you know what I'd like to do is to listen to the radio. Let's see what we can get on the radio. Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan was still in conversation with its government and its emperor, seeking to foment the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. Indeed, 1 hour after the Japanese air squadrons had commenced bombing in the American island of Oahu, the Japanese ambassador to the United States and his colleague delivered to our Secretary of State a formal reply to a recent American message. And while this reply stated that it seemed useless to continue the existing diplomatic negotiations, it contained no threat or hint of war or of armed attack. It will be recorded that the distance of Hawaii from Japan makes it obvious that this attack was deliberately planned many days or even weeks ago. During the intervening time, the Japanese government has deliberately sought to deceive the United States by false statements and expressions of hope for continued peace. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. Yesterday, the Japanese government also launched an attack against Malaya. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Hong Kong. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Guam. Last night, Japanese forces attacked the Philippine Islands. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Wake Island. And this morning, the Japanese attacked Midway Island. Japan has therefore undertaken a surprise offensive extending through the Pacific area. The facts of yesterday and today speak for themselves. The people of the United States have already formed their opinions and well understand the implications to the very life and safety of our nation. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and the Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense, that always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. I believe that I interpret the will of the Congress and of the people when I assert that we will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery will never again endanger us. Hostilities exist. There is no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interests are in grave danger. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph. So help us God. I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire. Thank you. Over 2,390 men and women were killed or wounded in the Pearl Harbor attack. Of these, 1,177 were sailors killed on the USS Arizona. Many were still in their bunks. Admiral Husband Kimmel was in charge of the Navy, and General Walter Short was in charge of the Army forces at Pearl Harbor. Let me go over a few of the events of the Second World War, starting in the Pacific. There was Wake Island, where a Marine major by the last name of Devereaux fought off several Japanese invasion attempts until he and his men and the construction men that were there also ran out of ammunition. They all died, and so did many Japanese. In the Philippines, General Douglas MacArthur and his second in command, General Jonathan Skinny Wainwright, were there. I called General MacArthur home. We could not afford to have a man of his caliber fall into the Japanese hands. Skinny Wainwright stayed. Skinny Wainwright went to a prison camp. The Americans and Filipinos who were captured by the Japanese took part in what has become known as the Bataan Death March, in which the Japanese forced them to walk under hot, arid conditions for many, many miles, with men falling to the side and being shot. But on April 18th, 1942, we got some revenge on the Japanese. Jimmy Doolittle and his raiders with B-25 medium bombers were launched from Navy carriers and bombed Japan. The Japanese were shocked and could not figure where these planes came from, because normally a B-25 medium Army bomber from an aircraft carrier. They captured some of our crews, and one famous crew, when they were questioned, the Japanese wanted to know where they came from. And some of them said Shangri-La. The Japanese were not happy. At Midway, in June of 1942, the tide of the war changed and turned. We had broken enough of the Japanese code to figure out that they were going to attack Midway Island, and also were going to send forces to the... We were worried about Alaska. But when they got to Midway, we had carriers there. They didn't know it. We sank 4 of their aircraft carriers, which put them out of action. They could not invade. And from that point on, they were on the run in the Pacific. We lost 1 aircraft carrier. They lost 4. There was island hopping in the Pacific. Chester Nimitz, who was an admiral, decided that that was the strategy to use. Instead of attacking every single Japanese stronghold and losing thousands of men and sailors, we would bypass the ones that were too strong, go around them, and let them wither on the vine. They could not get supplies. We cut them off, and we saved men's lives. There was Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, the Philippines, Okinawa, Iwo Jima, all of these. And against Adolf Hitler, we went into North Africa to fight against Erwin Rommel and his Afrinca Corps, with the help of the British, of course. They were there. We then went to Sicily and into Italy and started up that long boot, a tortuous, very difficult drive in the environment of Italy, with a mountain chain running down the center. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, we went back to Europe with the British and the Canadians and some French. We went to Normandy. We had a tough time on Omaha Beach. Utah Beach was not so bad, but Omaha Beach was. We lost a lot of men, but we succeeded. We went inland and started taking over the French countryside. In December of 1944, we were heading for Germany, and we were in the area known as the Ardennes Forest in Belgium and Luxembourg. What happened then, right around Christmas, was the Battle of the Bulge, where the Germans unleashed all of their forces that they had left on us. And our men were there for rest. They weren't there for a lot of fighting. We had to use cooks and everybody else to fight the Germans. And the weather was terrible. Our airplanes could not interdict the Germans. But then the skies cleared, and George Patton's Third Army came to the rescue, along with the Air Corps, who destroyed the Germans on the ground. It was a mighty victory. How about some names we remember from World War II? General George C. Marshall, Chief of Staff in Washington. General Dwight David Eisenhower, Supreme Commander in Europe. Started out as a 2-star general, and I made him a 4-star general. Admiral William Halsey, known as Bull Halsey. Admiral Ernest King. Admiral Frank Blackjack Fletcher. General Hap Arnold of the United States Army Air Corps. General George Patton. His soldiers called him Old Blood and Guts. They said it was their blood. The soldiers' general was General Omar Bradley. The men loved him. He was beloved. Admiral Raymond Spruance. Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr., a relative of mine who went in at Normandy. About a week later, he died of a heart attack. We also remember a lady named Tokyo Rose who liked to say nasty things about our people in the Pacific. And there was another lady named Axis Annie who liked to say things to our people in Europe, nastiness. The tools of war in the Second World War, the B-17 Flying Fortress, the B-24 Liberator, the B-29 Super Fortress, the B-25 Mitchell medium bomber, the B-26 Marauder, the P-40 Curtiss Wright Warhawk, made in Buffalo, New York, the P-38 Lightning, a 2-engine fighter that the Germans called the fork-tailed devil, the P-47 Thunderbolt, the P-51 Mustang. Some consider this to be the best plane of World War II. The C-47 Transport, which was civilian DC-3. The C-46 Transport, also a Curtiss plane, the Curtiss Commando. The F-4F Navy Wildcat. The F-6F Hellcat, U.S. Navy. The F-4U Corsair, the fighter plane with gull wings. Some also consider this to be one of the best planes of World War II. The Dauntless Dive Bomber, the plane that destroyed the Japanese at Midway. They looked up into the sun, and down came the dive bombers and destroyed them. The M1 Garand rifle, which is considered by some to be one of the reasons we won World War II. Semi-automatic, I believe 8 rounds. They won't let me use one. The BAR, the Browning automatic rifle, heavy but a machine gun you could carry. The Sherman tank, which was a medium tank. The LST, and another thing that maybe helped us to win the war was an item known as the Jeep. Now, I'm going to tell you about a weapon that we probably could not have won the war, or at least it would have been prolonged if we did not have it. And some people are going to say to me, you're talking about the development of the atomic bomb. No. This weapon was even the atomic bomb. You know what it was?
Rosie the
Yes, sir. Jobs in the armaments factories, on the railroads, and every place. The women. If it weren't for the women, the war would have lasted much longer. You should be proud. American female. Her job. And if you realize it, there's two Christmas songs that come directly out of the experience of the Second World War. And you're not. Do you know what those songs are? He says no. You're honest.
I'll be home.
Be home for Christmas is one of them. Eleanor, I'll be home for Christmas. I'll be home for Christmas is the one I was thinking of. And you know what? They know at the house and at Hyde Park, I like to sing. So I'm going to sing that. If you want to join with me, go ahead. If you want something, make sure. I'll be home for Christmas. You can plan on me. Please have snow and mistletoe and presents on the tree. Christmas Eve will find me where I long to be. I'll be home for Christmas if only my dreams. I like it. You must think about the lyrics of that song. I'll be home for Christmas if only in my dreams. The American servicemen and women, wherever they were in the world, were thinking of their families and of Christmas all through the war. Now here on the home front, and we're in Buffalo, and I once was the governor of New York. Do you know? We had rationing. You couldn't go buy just anything. You had ration tickets. Your car had a ration sticker on it for how much gas you could get. There was the OPA, which was the Office of Price Administration. We did not want inflation during the war. There were scrap drives. We needed scrap rubber and metal and a lot of other things. Even fat could be made into munitions. You couldn't get new tires for your car. Matter of fact, you couldn't get a new car. Only the military received new vehicles. And me. Travel was restricted. We had booming industries like Curtiss Wright, Bell, Aircraft, others all over the area. Bethlehem Steel was very important, Republic Steel. We had victory gardens everywhere. People were growing everything they could to help out. Rosie the Riveter, as was mentioned, was one of the things, and the women could do almost anything a man could do, and in some cases could do it better. Eleanor, during the war, came to me and showed me a book or a catalog from the New York Horticultural Society, because they had named a rose after her, called the Eleanor. She was so happy and beaming and smiling and everything, and then all of a sudden she started to scowl. She looked nasty. I said, well, what's wrong, Eleanor? What's wrong? She brought the catalog over to me and said, you read the description. No good in a bed, but great up against the wall. I laughed too. I thought that was pretty funny. She didn't. She was a tough woman, believe me. I sent her to check on things all over the country because I could not, and I was too busy. There's another Christmas song that comes directly from the Second World War experience. Do you know which one that is?
White Christmas?
Yes. White Christmas, which came from the movie, I believe, Holiday Inn. Everybody says White Christmas was the movie. No, that was later. That wasn't then. Yes. Holiday Inn was the movie. And there were different stars in there. Bing Crosby was one of them. Danny Kaye was in there.
Holiday Inn had Fred Astaire.
Fred Astaire definitely was in there. They wouldn't let me go in. So, well, let me try that one for you. See if I remember the lyrics. And Buffalo had a white non-Christmas, didn't it? Yes, probably won't even have a white Christmas. Maybe not. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh in the snow. Me with every night, may your days be merry and bright. I've got competition. And may all your Christmases be I beat him. You know, politics continued unabated. We were fighting the Germans and the Japanese, so what? They still didn't like me. Well, some people didn't. There was an election in 1944, and they made me run again. I did not want to run for, but they said you can't leave now with the war coming to a close soon. So I said, all right, I'll run. But I campaigned very little. I defeated the Republican candidate, the governor of New York, Thomas E. Dewey, by 432 electoral votes to 99 electoral votes. They were getting closer. But during the war, petty politics still reared its head. And let me read you a speech, at least part of it, that I gave in Chicago during the war. Well, let's make some simple illustrations that come to mind. For example, although I rubbed my eyes when I read it, we've been told that it was not a Republican depression, but a Democratic depression from which the nation was saved in 1933. That this administration, this one, mine, was responsible for all of the suffering and misery that the history books said that the American people have always thought had been brought about during the 12 ill-fated years when the Republican Party was in power. Now, there is an old and somewhat lugubrious adage which says, never speak of a rope in the house of a man who has been hanged. In the same way, if I were a Republican leader speaking to a mixed audience, the last word in the whole dictionary that I think I would use is that word, depression. These Republican leaders have not been content with attacks on me, or my wife, or my sons. No, not content with that they now include my little dog, Fowler. Well, of course, I don't resent attacks, and my family doesn't resent attacks. But Fowler does resent them. You know, Scotty. And being a Scotty, as soon as he learned that the Republican fiction writers in Congress and out had concocted a story that I had left him behind on the Aleutian Islands and had sent a destroyer back to find him at a cost to the American taxpayer of $2 or $3 or $8 or $20 million, his Scotch soul was furious. He has not been the same dog since. I am accustomed to hearing malicious statements about myself, such as that old worm-eaten chestnut that I have represented myself as indispensable. But I think I have a right to resent, to object to libelous statements about my dog. Thank you. As the war was drawing to an end, in February of 1945, I met with Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin at Yalta in the Russian Crimea to discuss a possible unconditional surrender policy in regard to Germany. By the time of my return from Yalta, I was clearly in failing health. Franklin D. Roosevelt died of a cerebral hemorrhage while at Warm Springs, Georgia on April 12th, 1945, at the age of 63. Vice President Harry S. Truman was sworn in as president. The route of the train that was bearing FDR's body back from Georgia to Washington was lined with millions of mourners, many in tears. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was laid to rest at his beloved estate, Springwood, which is in Hyde Park, New York, on the Hudson. And now, to conclude this program, I'd like to explain the history of a patriotic song. Back when the war clouds were gathering over Europe for World War I, the First World War, the United States Army, in order to recruit people for that conflict, decided that they would stage a Broadway show. So they did put a show on with the fabulous, memorable name of Yip Yip Ya Plank. I'd always remember that. And no, I'm not Roosevelt anymore. So a young songwriter from New York wrote up a patriotic song, and he gave it to the directors of this musical. They looked it over, and everybody looked it over and said, not enough zip, no zing. He took it back and threw it in a drawer. And when the war clouds gathered again over Europe prior to World War II, he took the song out and gave it to a Southern belle.
Kate Smith.
And she sang that song and made it famous. And her name was Kate Smith. So what I'd like to do now is sing the stanza to that song. Most of you don't know the stanza to that song. I do. I'll sing it and then you can come in. And if you want to stand then, that's fine. Or stand right away. You'll know this song, but you're used to singing the chorus. You don't sing the stanza normally that precedes it. So I'll sing that. And then you come in. You too. While the dark clouds gather far across the sea, let us pledge allegiance in a land that's free. Let us raise our voices to a land so fair. Let us raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America.